We are talking about the growing season in central Illinois with Stephanie Porter from Illinois Soybean Association. She is an agronomist from Field Advisor, part of Illinois Soybean Association. Stephen, how are you and welcome to the show?
Hi, good to be here.
Stephanie, let's start with our conversation with the late season for the beans. Do you see some SDS? Could you give us an update in the field? You
Yeah,
know
so
what, that we are almost done mid-July, believe it or not.
I know I can't believe it's already almost going to be over soon, it seems like, with my schedule. I would start out by saying if you look at across Illinois, there were several different planting dates of soybeans. So there were some people that were able to get in their soybeans planted early April to mid-April, I would say. And then there were some that had to wait till mid to late May. And then some, even in the southern part that got massive amounts of rain, were some of them didn't even plant until July or June. So we have a whole bunch of different planting dates going on. And to answer your question about SDS, I think that I was sent a picture of a leaf that looked like it possibly could be SDS about a week ago. But there's other diseases that it could possibly be, one being red crown rot, and there's others as well, brown stem rot. But I think that some of those diseases in soybeans are just about ready to start showing up, especially in areas that got a lot of heavy rains this past week or so.
How about volunteer corn for right now in beans?
Volunteer corn was a major issue this year across all the state, or at least where I've driven. I think that it starts in the fall. Obviously, there's some issues with the combine where corn is, exiting and it shouldn't be. So definitely need to address that in the fall. But now it's too late. So we have volunteer corn. A lot of people will try to put uh, an like a clethodim in with a grass killer in with their post herbicides. And sometimes when you put those in with some growth regulators, you can get some antagonism, which means that it may not work as well in certain conditions or environmental conditions. So you may have to apply that. For example, one brand is clethodim separately in a separate pass, or um, so there's been struggles with the volunteer corn, but for the most part, in the last several weeks, as I traveled across the state, I do see a lot of that volunteer corn dying. So that's good as we're scouting fields.
What do you recommend for weeds control for pigs, weeds, or water hemp for this time of the season?
That's the bad part. We start getting calls, and so for a lot of the major post herbicide that's being applied now would be the Enlist E3 system, or so it'd be an Enlist One or Enlist Duo, and some also apply Liberty or apply Liberty and Roundup with the Enlist system. And so the usually the cutoff, depending on different herbicides that you're using, the cutoff period would be usually around R1, but always read the label. Depending, the earliest cutoff date would be the one you use. And so a lot of the soybeans right now across the state are approaching R2. And so if we would be trying to apply a rescue treatment, for example, of Liberty, we have to be very careful and make sure we're not off label. Um, if that were to happen, I get questions on what if I would do it. I do think it's real. You can have a yield loss. You can, obviously, you're off label, so you're breaking the law. And you can also lose yield because you can blow off flowers and pods. And it's real. That is real. And we also have to be very careful too because of the harvest restriction with Liberty. It can stay. It's 70 days, and so it can stay within that plant, and that's why they have the R1 cutoff date. So whenever you harvest, you don't have residues still within the beans, and we don't want that either. So there's a lot of things going on there. And so to answer your question, is I would say to not break the law and don't do a rescue treatment. And unfortunately, we may have to walk beans. There's some people that use like a weed wiper, and run that through, and maybe just have to go in by hand and cut the weeds out, unfortunately. And there's a lot of water hemp out there across the state, along with a lot of different weeds that I don't normally see as we walk fields.
Do you have any concerns about next week with the heat about the weed situation?
With the heat, there's concern with corn pollination for sure. And when we don't want that stress, there are parts of the state that are in drought currently. I would say more so the north part of the state, but there are others, eastern Illinois, for example, that did not get rains. And so they're concerned with drought and pollination that can cause stress. And maybe, we won't have a good sink for the pollen to, we might have with drought also to have a kernel reduction as well on the tips, for example. And with the heat, we pay attention to the heat during the night more so. And so I've been our corn is pollinating right now. And I've been paying attention to the night temperatures. And so currently, they're not too bad, but that's what I would be more focused on when we talk about heat and stress during pollination for corn. I think the beans are fine. They a little bit more tolerance at this point. Not to say that heat and drought wouldn't stress them. The most critical period of stress would be obviously now during the reproduction phase, but more so as we get into trying to fill those pods.
Producible crop.
So they definitely would have to get a certain wheat variety that was adapted to their area. And the key thing as you move north is that you want to make sure when you're planting a soybean, it would be a maturity. Usually they're pushing a little bit of fuller maturity, but you have to be careful because you want to make sure that you're able to have it mature and obviously have a fully sized bean when you harvest, which can be an issue. I actually have a friend, used to be a coworker that, for example, did double crop in Michigan. And they actually did get a freeze before the crop was fully mature. And so that is something that is tricky. And I think that we need to do more research on that. And I think that's a lot of other states are wanting to do research on that as well. I know just recently, Iowa, Wisconsin, Indiana have reached out and they want to answer some of these questions. And I think that there are certain farmers already also doing their own on-farm research to make sure that they know what varieties that they should choose in a double crop system, and more particularly what maturity range. There's also questions about population as well. And those are some other research that we want to do to see how high, usually a lot, that you can really push the populations as you plant later. but we would like to see what population would be most economical.
Do you have any final thoughts about this growing season?
It's every year I say that huh, it's a challenging growing season, but I feel like this year, I thought last year we had bad weather, but this year it's just been a lot of different weather outcomes across the state all throughout the season, whether it be too much rain down south or not enough rain up north. We've had wind events, we've had hail, we've had so many different. We've had extreme heat. It was almost too cool earlier in the season. So we've just had weather all over the place, and I just feel like it's a very strange season. And with that, attempting to finish a blog on, don't give up on those later planted crops, as they could later season experience some different pests and diseases, or, heavier disease than normal. So don't give up on scouting on those. And so that's kind of my take home message at this point in time.
All right, Stephanie, thanks for coming by. I will see you in the farm progress show at Decatur.
Yes, we will be there. So we will be the Illinois Soybean Association agronomy team will be at our plot, which is on the side of the Farm Progress Show, closest to Richland Community College. Richland Community College is nice enough to let us use their plots that they have there. And so we will be set up there talking about ISA funded research, as well as our on-farm trials and field advisor. So if you have any questions, want to check us out, we'll have in the morning, we'll have cookies and coffee for everybody. And so we hope to see you there.
This is Stephanie Porter from Illinois Soybean Association on back roads of Illinois.